Now, one of the best TVs I have ever reviewed is the BRAVIA 9 from Sony, which maxes out, sadly, at 85 inches. Now, an 85-inch BRAVIA 9 will set you back $4,500. The 98-inch TCL we're reviewing today costs nearly half that. The QM7K already has the edge on Sony when it comes to size and value, but can it compete everywhere else? The QM7K is new for 2025. It's available in 6 different sizes ranging from 55 to 115 inches diagonally and is a native 4K display full array QD mini LED TV with up to 3000 nits of real world brightness. TCL touts near OLED-like color and contrast, but with the brightness and benefits viewers have come to expect from LED-based TVs thanks to some innovations they've made to the backlighting system and processor. Speaking of the processor, TCL's AIPQ Pro processor takes advantage of AI algorithms that enhance things like contrast, color, and clarity in real time, similar to what Sony does with their cognitive processing. This TV supports Dolby Vision and Atmos with internal sound and speakers by Bang & Olufsen. Yes, that Bang & Olufsen. And gamers will be happy about TCL's 144Hz refresh rate and features like VRR, ALLM, FreeSync, and G-Sync. The last TV we reviewed was Sony's BRAVIA 7. Going from the 85-inch Sony to the 98-inch TCL was noticeable. One thing I really like about the QM7K is its narrower bezel and thinner overall chassis. And in comparison to our reference 98-inch Sony X90L, you might even mistake the TCL for an OLED. It's just so much thinner and more upscale in its appearance. I connected several sources to test image quality using the QM7K's 4 HDMI inputs, 2 of which are HDMI 2.1, with the other 2 being 2.0. Thankfully, though, the ARC port doesn't use one of the 2.1 ports, which meant I was able to connect my PlayStation and Xbox without having to sacrifice quality, which is an absolute win. To test the TV, I also connected our Apple TV 4K, Xidu Movie Server, and Video Forge Pro, which was used for calibration. The QM7K uses Google TV as its operating system, so you're going to be asked to sign in with your Google account on initial power-up. But once signed in, you're going to see all the apps already synced with your Google account, which in our case included YouTube TV, YouTube, Netflix, Max, Disney Plus, and a few others. You can get or add more apps through the Google TV home screen or the Play Store. Now, the first time you turn on the TCL, you're going to be watching it in its standard picture profile. I wouldn't call this profile accurate, but it's not the worst out-of-the-box picture that I've seen. When it comes to picture quality, there are actual standards a TV must adhere to be considered correct. However, it's not uncommon for manufacturers to just completely ignore these standards to satisfy the masses' needs, for brighter, more colorful, and sharper TVs, which is what TCL has done with their standard profile. But when people like me, who review TVs for a living, talk about accuracy, this means the TV must have a margin of error, aka a delta E, of less than 3 for grayscale, think white point accuracy, as well as for its color. The TCL standard profile measured a delta E of 10.5 for grayscale and 7.7 for color, which isn't horrible, but far from pixel perfect. If you just want a bright, saturated, and contrasty image, leave the TV in its standard profile. For even more brightness, maybe switch it to Vivid. Just know that you won't be seeing your favorite TV show or movie the way they were meant to be seen in these 2 profiles. But if you're a stickler for accuracy, you're going to want to use TCL's Movie or Filmmaker picture profile. Both are accurate right out of the box, with Filmmaker mode being the most accurate with a delta E of 1.2 for grayscale and 0.9 for color, which, if I'm being honest, are figures I'm used to seeing after I do calibration, not before. While Filmmaker mode is far and away the most accurate profile from the factory, it's not the brightest, with a real-world brightness hovering around 200 nits. Pulling up the menu, though, revealed that the TV's brightness was at 30, which is an eco-friendly setting. Maxing out the brightness setting to 100 resulted in roughly 800 nits, which is plenty bright for everyday viewing, even in some ambient light, and definitely bright enough for nighttime viewing. If I went into the TCL's more advanced picture menus and I upped the peak luminance and dynamic backlighting settings even to low, the QM7K easily hit well above 1000 nits, with my best measurement coming in at just under 1800 nits in standard definition, which is nuts given that this is a 98-inch TV. When fed a Dolby Vision test signal, brightness increased to 2000 nits. Now, this isn't the brightest TV on the market, but it's far from dull and should be flexible enough to work in various environments. But more importantly, light uniformity and backlight control are near perfect edge to edge, with virtually no ghosting, vignetting, or worse, blooming. As good as the TCL is from the factory, after a simple calibration using my Video Forge, it was pixel perfect with a delta E of basically 0 for both grayscale and color, with a sustainable brightness of around 1000 nits when viewing standard definition content and roughly 1500 nits when viewing HDR content. To put that into perspective, the Sony BRAVIA 9 got a little bit brighter when maxed out, but not by much. And we were testing the 85-inch, not the 98 like the TCL here. Compared to our reference Sony X90L, which is a 98-inch model, the TCL's brightness idles at the X90L's limits and crushes the Sony's everyday brightness of around 800 nits. This is all good news, but honestly, the best news is that you don't have to spend a lot of additional time and money to enjoy an accurate image on the TCL. I'd skip professional calibration altogether. Just place the TV in its filmmaker picture profile, adjust your peak and dynamic brightness settings to taste, and just get on with the show. My only other tip is to leave all of that dynamic brightness and contrast aids off, or set at least to low. But you know what? Hey, you do you. But technical mumbo jumbo aside, the TCL looks fantastic whether you watch content in HD or 4K. Everything just pops and looks brilliant. In its filmmaker profile, colors look true to life with good saturation and contrast, with no overt bias towards any of the primary colors. This makes the picture even and balanced, so no Smurf-like people or urine-soaked clouds. Things like an actor's skin, hair, and clothing were rendered with terrific detail and texture without glaring sharpening effects like jagged edges. We revisited the live-action adaptation of Ghost in the Shell, which looked amazing despite being in standard dynamic range. Christy and I got sucked into the Bob Dylan bioflick, A Complete Unknown, on Hulu, and you would have never known it was streaming. It looked so good. And we even stomached as much as we could from the newest and frankly god-awful Captain America, but not even the TCL's top-shelf image quality could keep my focus on the screen. But hey, you know what? That's Marvel's fault, not TCL. What did keep my attention, though, was gaming. While I don't play many fast action games that require my displays to be on, the bleeding edge of what's possible, the TCL passed every benchmark test the PlayStation 5 dished out. And while I am more of a casual gamer, I loved wasting an afternoon doing grounded runs on The Last of Us 2 and going for as many birdies as possible in EA Sports PGA Tour. Seriously, I can think of few TVs that offer up the level of immersion while not having to sacrifice things like, input response or refresh rate like the TCL. Now, true gamers, I know you're going to fight me in the comments about how no self-respecting gamer would ever game on a TV. Pay no mind, because I think gaming on a big TV is the only way to play. Before I get to the fine print, I have to take a second to applaud TCL for the TV's built-in speakers, which were a joint effort with Bang & Olufsen. Before you get too excited, though, buying the QM7K is not the same as getting a massive TV with an actual Bang & Olufsen soundbar like the Stage or the Theater thrown in for free. But this system does outperform most other built-in TV speakers. Dialogue intelligibility was first rate, and I loved seeing B&O's trademark Biosonic EQ present in the quick menus. Christy and I relied on the internal speakers exclusively for the first day or so and were impressed. She even leaned over to me a few times and exclaimed, "These are good." So those who may not be keen on getting a soundbar or a more complicated home theater speaker system, you may be impressed with what's included with the TCL. While the QM7K may seem like a no-brainer, there are a few things I need to point out before you click Add to Cart. First, the TCL screen has a glossy coating and does not respond well to direct side lights or lights that may be located towards the back of your room, but still in line with the screen. Many TVs are like this, so this is not an issue unique to the TCL. Nevertheless, you need to be aware. Second, the QM7K's off-axis viewing has improved over previous generations, but it's not perfect. Across the width of a 9-foot sofa, I saw no shift in color or contrast. However, if I stood way off to the side, color saturation, black levels, and just overall clarity did suffer. Lastly, if you set the TV up for maximum brightness and watch content in Dolby Vision, you may, emphasis on may, see some minor shadow-like halos or outlines around actors with darker skin tones in front of bright backgrounds or in bright scenes. I noticed this 2 times while watching Captain America: Brave New World. And I've started to see this on more and more TVs when going for maximum brightness when viewing HDR content. So this issue is not exclusive to TCL. Keeping the dynamic luminosity and contrast settings set to standard or low eliminates this potential nuisance without, sacrificing too much brightness. Starting the comparisons off with our 98-inch reference TV, the Sony X90L. This isn't really a fair fight. The TCL wins. And while this conclusion may be foregone, remember, Sony is still selling the X90L in 2025 and asking just under $6,000 for the privilege. Not only is the TCL better, it's also half the cost. Now, I know Sony just unveiled their newest 98-inch TV, the BRAVIA 5, which is a mini LED similar to the BRAVIA 7. When it finally goes on sale, the 5 will have an MSRP of $6,500, more than double that of TCL's current street price. Sony has a history of making great television, so it's possible the BRAVIA 5 could be better than the QM7K. Whether it's twice as good, we're going to have to wait and see. But coming off our BRAVIA 7 review, I was actually pretty reluctant to take it down because pound for pound, that TV is fantastic and arguably the best value TV Sony has made in a long while. And while I stand by every syllable of my BRAVIA 7 review, it only took a minute or 2 for me to realize that the TCL was just every bit as good. Where things get better is in size. In this house, we love a big TV. At a whopping 98 inches, the TCL was also snappier to respond to remote commands, was more accurate out of the box, had better sound, and better gaming chops. For the price of Sony's 85-inch BRAVIA 7, you can score a 98-inch QM7K from TCL without sacrificing much, if anything, in terms of performance. And finally, the main event. The best TV I have ever seen and reviewed, the Sony BRAVIA 9 versus the TCL QM7K. First, this is not an apples-to-apples comparison as the Sony tops out at 85 inches, whereas the TCL reviewed here is a 98-inch model. That aside, I think the Sony ekes out the win when it comes to scaling signals below 1080p, as well as appearing just a little bit more three-dimensional when viewing either 4K or 4K HDR content. Oh, and it has slightly better off-axis performance, but it's all really close. All that said, the TCL is every bit as accurate as the Sony, and, at least in my testing, it calibrated better and quicker than the BRAVIA 9, with even lower margins of error for both grayscale and color. While the differences are not likely to be visible to the naked eye, I could measure them using a calibrated light meter. While the Sony BRAVIA 9 may ultimately be the, quote, better TV, if it were me and my money, I would buy the TCL because all things considered, it is every bit as good, is larger and thus more immersive, and, well, you get all of that performance and cinematic immersion for less. Say hello to my new reference TV. So that's it. That is now my take on TCL's fabulous new QM7K. What did you guys think? Do you think it was even fair to compare it to the cream of the crop BRAVIA 9? I want to know. Sound off. I know there's going to be a lot of thoughts on this one, so can't wait to read your comments. And if I missed a comparison or there's a detail or two you want to know more about, go ahead, leave it down below. Never know, could end up in an episode of Unplugged. Until then, remember, guys, the only person that has to like the sound or sight, in this case, of your system is you. So happy listening, happy watching. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.